Hello, it's Reija and welcome to another video. Today I'm back with a more traditional wrap-up to talk about all the things I read in August and all the things I read for new Releaseathon specifically. So without further ado, let's get started. So my August started with a move and a major, huge life change. So at the start of the month, I was kind of reeling from stress and all the assorted emotional things. So I needed something soothing, something fluffy to read, and therefore I read a bunch of manga. Starting with My Androgynous Boyfriend by Tamekou, Volume 1. Premise of the story is that it follows the relationship between this couple who where the woman is an office worker and the her boyfriend is an influencer and works at this clothing store, and her boyfriend is femme presenting or more androgynous, and he is the one who really takes care of his appearance and basically fills in the more feminine role of the couple. That's the premise, and basically the running joke of the book is how they get into these scenarios where they get mistaken for either a lesbian couple or a gay couple, stuff like that. And I have to say that that particular aspect of this story was actually the thing that I didn't like, because this is a heterosexual couple. They are straight. They don't actually face any of the animosity of a queer couple. Yet the whole running joke of the series is based on the fact that, if these were actual queer people in these scenarios, the joke is hinging on the reality that queer people face bigotry in similar situations. And that's not funny to me. It's not funny to me that a straight couple gets to have these tongue-in-cheek moments of, oh, you're a lesbian couple, when in reality an actual lesbian couple would face much more scrutiny, you know? So it made me really uncomfortable when I figured out that, okay, this is gonna be the running theme of this whole volume, there are gonna be these instances and these jokes. Basically the only, I liked the art style, it was fine. None of the characters were super memorable though, and I will also say that I liked the few glimpses of nods to queer culture and some facts about queer living in Japan specifically, but those were few and far between, and I won't be continuing on with this series, and in fact I will most likely be donating this volume to either the library or for my friends or something, because I can't see myself continuing purchasing these volumes. And I gave this 2 stars, not my favorite. The next thing I read was I Think Our Son is Gay, Volume 1 by Okura. And this series takes on a similar approach where it looks at queer life from the point of view of a cis hetero narrator, but whereas Androgynous Boyfriend kind of makes a joke about queer identity and kind of accidentally jokes about it, I Think Our Son is Gay is more directed at questioning parents and parents who might be struggling to find out that their child is queer, and it sort of tries to open up people to be more supportive and tries to present queerness as just a normal everyday thing. So I think that actually if you look at it from the point of view of who is the target audience for this book, I would actually say that it's not the queer audience who is the target. It is actually the cis straight audience, and especially the parents who kind of need this book. And therefore I think that it is valuable for that. It doesn't really talk down to the reader, which I really liked, but it can be a very repetitive reading experience, especially reading it back to back, because this was serialized in a magazine, and it is a kind of gag manga where every chapter sort of reiterates the main point of the story. so it can feel a tad repetitive, but I still enjoyed it, and I might continue on with the series, but possibly from the library. I don't see myself picking up the rest of the volumes. That said, I do think that this serves perfectly well as a standalone as well, if you would so choose. But there is a sort of continuous overarching story progression as well, though it isn't as overt as in some of the other series that I usually read. I gave this 3 stars. Then I read BL Metamorphosis Volume 1 by Kaori Tsurutani, and this is basically taking sort of like the whole boys love comics industry, like commenting on that, but making the focus about this friendship between a high school student and a widowed elderly woman. And basically it is about these two finding common interest in reading BL and finding joy in reading these boys love stories. And it isn't necessarily about the queer themes, though obviously when BL is sort of like boys love is the sort of framing device of the story, queer themes are bound to pop up, but the actual crux of the story is the friendship specifically between these two individuals. And I really liked it. I gave it 3 stars once again, like it was fine. But I do feel like it will take a couple more volumes for me to like warm up to it, but I'm open-minded, and I'm really looking forward to picking more of these volumes up. I do want to see what the overall like arc of the storyline is going to be regarding these two characters, because it is basically about this like the elderly woman is like recently widowed and trying to find some like new trying to recenter her life, and the high school student is a very like awkward, shy person who has to sort of hide her interests. So I will be interested to see where this story goes. It was a very delightful and heartwarming and just what I needed when I was going through a rough time. And now I want to talk about all of the things that I read for New Releaseathon. This is how my bingo board looked at the end of the month. I didn't get to read as many things that I would have liked. However, I will say that I read a bunch of things that I really resonated with and found out some like new authors, and it was a fantastic experience, and I had a great time hosting the readathon with Kristinel and friends. So yeah. First off, I read Witch Hat Atelier Volume 9 by Kamome Shirahama. Now, you may know, this is one of my favorite manga series currently running, and this volume was no exception. I really enjoyed it. Like, this volume is kind of like a hit and miss in certain aspects, because it like has a sort of like emotional whiplash. It deals with the whole like festival that is happening in this volume, but it also deals with some pretty grim topics like sexual assault and also betrayal and other things. And I think that Kamome Shirahama handles it quite well. It is not handled in a gratuitous way, especially the SA topic is handled very like subtly and focusing specifically on believing and listening to the victims. And yeah, I really enjoyed this volume. I gave it 4 stars. It was definitely a very good volume, not necessarily my favorite out of all the volumes that I have read. And it is basically like setting up more of the world to be opened up later. It is setting up principal characters that are gonna be major players later on in the series, I have no doubt. And yeah, I was so like excited about this volume, and I really liked it, and I can't wait for volume 10, which is coming out soon as well. So yeah, I love this series so much. And then I read 2 novellas published by Neon Hemlock Press. The first one that I read was Let the Mountains Be My Grave by Francesca Tacchi. This is basically an alternative history set in World War II Italy, and it is about the resistance fighters fighting against the Nazis in the like mountainside. And there are some actual historical events that take place during this book, but with a magical twist. And I really liked the narrative voice. I felt that both of these novellas that I read from Neon Hemlock had very specifically interesting authorial voices. Like the way the characters are written are something that I have personally not really read before. There is some really interesting authorial voice and authorial devices used to make these make the narrative pop a bit more. That said, there was some repetition. The main character keeps constantly and that is his point. He keeps constantly fixating on revenge and killing as much Nazis as he can. But the thing is that when it's a novella and it's a shorter work, those instances of repetition will stick out all the more, especially the more there are of those instances, So that kind of bugged me. But at the same time, this one had some really interesting lore, this idea of you as a person who believes carrying gods within you and accessing these old gods' power because of this consistent devotion to tradition and having access to magic in that way. And sort of this idea between agnosticism and Gnosticism and theism and atheism. These are core themes in the story. I really liked it. And I can't wait to read more from Francesca Tacchi. I am very excited to see what Z is gonna write next. And then I read Uncommon Charm by Emily Bergslien and Kat Weaver. This takes place in the 1920s, and it is all about this jazz age glamour, glitz and glam, with a slight magical, ghostly, horror-esque twist. It's all about alchemy and also queer yearning, but there is no actual romance in this. There's just a lot of queer characters. And I enjoyed this. I enjoyed this a tad bit more than I enjoyed the previous novella that I mentioned, but both of these were very good. And I also really liked the narrative voice. The main character is so obnoxiously sassy and just, she's out for herself and she doesn't care really what other people think of her. And I really thought that was really refreshing. It was done in a very humorous way, and I just really liked being in her head. She was such a fun character to follow, and she was also curious about all of the other characters surrounding her. So this was such a fantastic time. I will say that the general mystery that is going on in this in the narrative of the story would have worked for me better if this was an actual novel and there was more time to flesh everything out, because the ending kind of comes abruptly. But that said, I still enjoyed the ride, and I would really like to read other things that Emily Bergslien and Kat Weaver come up with. I gave this 3.5 stars. I really enjoyed it, and I am really excited for all the things that Neon Hemlock Press is gonna be publishing, because if these two are my first entries into their catalog, I couldn't be more happy. I am very excited to pick up all of their future releases. And finally, I read a Finnish new release called Laakson Linnut, Aavan Laulut, written by Katri Kauppinen, and this is actually their debut novel. They have independently published some novels before, but this is basically their first release by a major Finnish publisher. And I like this. This was also alternative history, but also kind of veering towards fantasy, and it takes place in a sort of Iron Age, start of Iron Age, end of Bronze Age, kind of alternative Finland, where there are these different Finnic tribes are fighting with each other and trading with each other, and there's all sorts of there are these small tribal communities, it's also very much inspired by Kalevala. There are for example, there are allusions to Sampo. And there's also a lot of emphasis on the more old Finnish like belief systems and mythology, especially relating to the belief of power animals and like this idea that every single living entity possesses power and a sort of like powerful essence within, and that humans can sort of like resonate with the essence of an animal and have a kind of soul connection. So that was an interesting take as well. I have read other Finnish books with that theme before, but this one definitely like put a lot more emphasis into it and made it the core theme of the novel. I thought that it was really interesting. The ending, once again, was kind of abrupt, and this is a relatively short book, so I would have liked some more like development for the characters by the end. There's also some very unfortunate implications of this sort of how the main couple ends up, where basically kind of the groom steals the bride away to another village, which was an actual thing that happened like in the olden days, but still I think that for a book that is targeted toward modern audiences, consent is key, you know. Also, there is this unfortunate queer tragedy that happens that is verging on kind of barrier gaze trope, which I wasn't a huge fan of, and I wish that could have handled differently. I don't think that necessarily needed to be there, you know. But I did think that this book was taking risks, and I liked it, and I liked reading it, and I definitely liked the authorial voice as well. So I will definitely be keeping a lookout for more works from Katri Kauppinen as well. So for me, this has been a very successful new releaseathon. Like, none of the books that I read were like huge standouts, but they were all books that were taking risks and trying new things. Some of them did not always work, but they were trying, and that made it exciting to read and made it exciting for me to continue reading on and excited for these authors' future works. So yeah, I'm very happy with how this readathon turned out. So yeah. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Please consider subscribing to the channel as well for more bookish content. And if you got this far, leave me a bird emoji. Because Laakson Linnut means birds of the valley, so I want to see some birds fly up in my comment section. And I will see you in another video very soon. Bye bye!